Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. On this week's episode, we're doing a quick fire, sharing questions and answers from our Farmers Market Pros online community. I'm one of your hosts, Brijet Myers. I'm a longtime Farmers Market Manager, Vendor 101 co-teacher, and education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Catt White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active Farmers Market Manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, which is coming up next March in San Diego. We're so excited.
We're counting down.
We are counting
now
down.
Now it's like a real countdown.
200 or so days.
Yes. Which sounds like a lot, but as we know,
they'll fly by.
Just flying by.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
even though we're all in a time warp and like time-space continuum right now, where like time means nothing. But
it's so weird after last year. Wait, did that happen last week? Oh no, that was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, already selling tickets to Intense, the Farmers Market Conference. People are reserving their seats, and since we'll need to spread those seats out a little bit probably this year, I feel like we're going to fill up.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So you can get your tickets today. The easiest way to do that, just go to farmersmarketpros.com. There's a million buttons and links there, and you can register today.
Can't miss it.
Take advantage of that super early bird.
That's right.
That's right. Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by MarketWurks. Escape the stuffed 3-ring binder and the generic spreadsheets and consolidate your market applications, space reservations, invoicing, and reports into one convenient program. MarketWurks can help. It's easy to establish and update vendor profiles and create polished market maps to give your website and your marketing some extra love with MarketWurks' simple interface. If you're ready to streamline your market management systems, contact Chris at MarketWurks by clicking on their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. Today we are talking about some of the questions and answers that have come up lately in our online Farmers Market Pros community. If you're an active Farmers Market participant and you're not part of that group yet, come on over. We have such good conversations there. It is always a good time, and I love chatting with people in our sphere because, you know what? Other people just don't get it.
I know, it's funny.
I won't look at it for a couple of days, and then I go back, and then I'm just like, bam, there's so much on there. And
so much happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a private group on Facebook. You've got to answer 3 questions and tell us how you're active in the farmers market community. I do decline a fair amount of people that pop over for reasons
unknown.
Reasons unknown.
Sounds like a fun
need
group
a friend.
to join. Yeah,
maybe,
just need a friend.
Maybe.
But Catt is a good gatekeeper.
I am. There's really, when you're in there, you're talking to other folks in your group.
Yeah. And then you can be candid and you can be real and you can ask real tough questions. And I feel like we're all really comfortable giving honest feedback and answers and tips and tricks, things that have worked for us. And it's a great back and forth. I love being in that group.
It is.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yep. All right.
So today, let's start with Jackie Leo. I'm sure I'm massacring her name. She's in Fishers, Indiana. She's a market manager, and she has questions about SNAP EBT at markets. And this really stumps a lot of people. Yep. And I think it's why less farmers markets offer SNAP, EBT, food stamps, whatever they're called in your area, than they could. The application is not necessarily user-friendly for farmers markets. It's gotten better over the last few years, but it is daunting. So Jackie says, when I started running our market a year ago, we were able to accept SNAP. This year, we had to file for a new account because our previous market manager left. We're organized as a city government program, and on the application, they need a social security number. Our controller's office has turned everything over to legal. Uh-oh. Oh, Jack. Never again. And won't even let me work with USDA to get it figured out. How did you get SNAP to work for your market? So a lot of market managers jumped in to answer that question in the group, and it boils down to, you've kind of answered your question, Jackie, in the question, which is your market manager probably is going to have to give up her social security number and sign up as the authorized person. at that market. We're really sorry that you brought it to your controller's attention because they're never going to let you do that. So I hope Jackie gets her situation worked out.
Yeah.
But basically, we run into the same thing because we partner with business improvement districts as the nonprofit that hosts our markets. And if we were to sign up to process EBT as the business improvement district, every member of the board and their husbands or wives would need to would need to supply us with actual copies of their Social Security card.
So
Not even just their numbers.
You can imagine
Who even
how
has that
excited-
card anymore?
Oh, man.
I had to, when I first started taking EBT at the Little Italy Market, I had to go to the Social Security Administration and get a new copy of my card because who has
my
their card?
God.
For EBT acceptance at the
That's
market.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
And,
that's
my
some-
husband's card.
Wow. And that's something, really good to know just for market staff too. And not necessarily to tell everybody who comes to the market, but we do get a lot of people that come to the market and say, oh, I'm so glad that your market offers this, and why don't other markets do it? And I think it's easy to look at other markets that don't do it and kind of be like, oh, those people suck, or this market
they
just
don't
really
want
needs
those
to get their
shoppers.
stuff together, or or how rude of them. But just understanding that there are a lot of these hoops that you have to jump through, and it should be easier. But you have to hold federal paperwork. It is a big deal to offer these services. So kind of just having grace for markets that aren't able to do that, and to maybe find a nice way to communicate that to people that shop your market who aren't able to use their card at other markets.
Yeah, just, it's a complicated federal program. The application was clearly designed for individually owned grocery stores.
Oh, that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and so they've taken some input from us over the years from various groups, Farmers Market Coalition. A lot of folks have had some good interface with USDA in the last few years. They have made that application a little bit easier, but there are still some rough bumps to get over to get that rolling.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like anything that farmers market kind of is a little bit different with getting your address on Google Maps. It's I remember when it was okay, we're going to mail you this postcard and then enter the code that comes. They're trying to mail it to our street. I'm no, it's in the middle of the street is our event address. I'm you can mail it to my office. They're oh, is that where the market is? I'm no. The market is in the middle of the street. They're okay, we're going to mail a postcard to
We
the
live
middle
in a
of the
grocery
street.
store-centric world, baby.
That's right.
They can't keep us in their box anymore.
I know.
So all those little things that happen, and just understanding that it's a federal program, and they want your Social Security number, and they want someone to be very, very taking this very, very seriously, because EBT fraud is a big deal and it should not be misused. So they want to make sure that someone is going to be responsible for that. So I feel explaining that to market managers or to whatever team you have that's working with you is that they are taking this seriously, and someone needs to be responsible for not just handing EBT out or letting people come use 10 EBT cards and cashing it out and things like that I've never seen happen at the market. But it's you want to stay ahead of that, and that's why that program is designed that way, and that's why they need some very important personal information about you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's that.
Yes, and we hope that you get that figured out, Jackie. And we do understand it's a red tape nightmare. So here's another one about SNAP. How do you encourage people to come back to use their EBT tokens and market match? We're finding that 2/3 of those are being used. And I feel you here. This is from Yvette Liepert from Yakima, Washington.
Yakima.
Yakima.
Oh, God, cut that out.
Nope.
We're leaving that in. Sorry, Yvette. We've actually heard this from a lot of people lately, and I've seen it on Farmers Market Coalition forums, and this seems to be a big thing. And I think maybe we're noticing it more because people got pandemic EBT.
Yeah.
They sent EBT that hadn't been issued yet. They sent it a blanket out to college students. So there's a lot more EBT users out there now as part of the stimulus and protecting the economy during the pandemic and things than there ever used to be. And so we may be dealing with some slightly different populations and people that just aren't used to the system. But it is kind of amazing. I mean, those tokens and script, that's cash, and obviously people are stashing them. But that's part of the answer, is people are treating them like savings.
Yeah.
So they come and they get their tokens or they get their script, and then they stash them away for a rainier day than they're having that week.
Yeah.
So they're kind of hoarding them, I think, a little bit. Government programs changed a lot over the last couple of administrations, so I think they're maybe a little bit insecure about what if they stop giving them to us at this level.
Yeah.
Good news. I got a press release yesterday from USDA, and in fact, food stamps across the board have been increased for this next year.
Oh, that's
so
great
it's,
news.
it's for about, I want to say it's $36 a month or something per person in the household when you're on EBT.
Wow. Oh, good.
When they phrase it the other way, that it's $1.13 or something a day, it doesn't sound like much, but it adds up.
Yeah.
I mean, that can really add up in terms of your grocery budget. So the good news is there's more EBT being authorized. The bad news is folks seem to be not turning it in all the time. You'd think they'd spend it right that minute, but they really don't. And sometimes it's the users, and I think sometimes it's the farmers and vendors.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, I think there is this abstraction too, because a lot of markets, they're little coins or they're little vouchers. And, even with our staff, we have to remind them, like, this represents money.
Yeah, it's
like, this
not
is
monopoly money.
tender.
Okay.
So I think that might be a thing, too. If
think so,
people
too.
throw it in a purse and then they change bags, or it gets left in their car, or maybe they're leaving it in their market bags. For us, we just like to remind people on social media, in our newsletters, this is something that we offer. And just reminding people, like, hey, if you have your EBT card, come use it here at the market, and just kind of putting that
And if
in.
you've already swiped, please bring those things back and spend them. So the reason this is coming up in our group is because it costs money to order those little tokens and that script and things. So some of the managers are frustrated because they've got all these tokens out there and now they're out of tokens.
Yeah.
But they don't, they're not coming back. They should be recycling through. So they're hoping that people bring them back. I will say that somebody had the opinion, and I personally agree with it, that you get a better return on script than you do on the wooden tokens. And we all love the wooden tokens. They're really cute. But they're kind of unwieldy to keep in the bottom of your purse. You know, to get $25 worth, you've got to
old-timey bag of coins.
Yeah.
Like at a Renaissance fair or something like that.
Like a little treasure box. I feel like I need for those coins.
And they add up in weight. So if people are throwing them in their purse, they may be cleaning out their purse and then not carrying 25 or 35 little wooden tokens in there. It takes up a lot of room.
Your kids are playing with them, and it's like they're falling in the crack.
I wonder if that's happening. That's probably what's happening.
If I had those, my kids would be like, yes, and put them in all their little change buckets and things. So.
And maybe you can do simple things like when you're actually, giving out the tokens at the market, like talk to the people who are using their cards. Say, hey, what are you excited to buy today?
Yeah.
Or what's on the menu for the week? How are you going to spend, not in an intrusive way, like, what are you doing with this? But, just engage them in conversation, and maybe like, I like to tell people at our market, like, these don't expire. So they know that if they don't spend them all that day, that they can use them the following week.
But that might be encouraging them not to turn them in.
Yeah, but then I don't know. You can just, we do know a lot of our regulars, and we typically see them every week, so we know that we're buying stuff. But you might ask them, like, hey, who's your favorite vendor? Or what are you buying this week? Or are you shopping for something in particular? Just to engage them and let them know that they should be redeeming them to spend at the market right there.
Yeah, and if you have enough flow to do your market match program, enough, if you're not funding your own market match program, or even if you are and you want to encourage people to use that, I always say, like, hey, to get the most out of the match program, get $10 in EBT and we'll match you $10 today, and then come back next week and get $10 and get your $10 match instead of getting $50 today, because you can only match $10 even if you get $50 from your EBT card.
That's at our market, and that varies from market to market.
It depends on how your
sure.
match is set up. Yeah, so that kind of encourages them to get like a smaller amount each time they come to the market, enough to get their groceries, of course, but get their just what they need for the day, and then come back the next week. And then that just encourages them to make a habit of shopping at the market and to come back. And we've had a lot of shoppers come back and say, hey, I was on EBT when things were rough. I'm not on EBT anymore, but I made such a habit of shopping at the farmer's market. Now I just do my grocery shopping here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's how you get long-term customers, because many people aren't on EBT forever. So you want to make sure that your EBT customers know that this is a place where they should be shopping even when they're off EBT.
Yeah.
It works to develop that habit, which is nice.
Yeah.
We've also had people point out that, times are tough right now, and some people aren't going to work, so they're just kind of staying home. Or, at least we're not quite as bad today as a few months ago. We'll see what happens coming up. But, some folks just aren't getting out there and traveling around. So they'll hold on to that script or those tokens, and hopefully they'll be back later. The challenge to it, part of it, is that if you have a funder that's funding your market match, a lot of times, or you've got a grant, if you're part of a Finney grant or something, they want to see the records of how many have been redeemed. If, for instance, next year you want a bigger allocation, you've got to show that you used up everything that they gave you this year in terms of grant funding to do those matches. And so it's frustrating because they can't if they're not coming back, you're not going to be able to up your grant proposal. And so we have some market managers in the group that said they're sending out letters or they're including it as part of their email newsletters and things to say, hey folks, the folks that help us match these dollars require that we show that they're actually used and not just issued. So please come shop and bring those back before the end of the fiscal year or the end of a certain month.
I wonder if this will change seasonally. I mean, I'm not sure what tourism is like in Yakima, Washington. We have a very touristy market, and especially during the summer, the last couple of weeks, we've seen so many people use their EBT cards out of state. And I wonder if some people are using their cards on Saturday, not using all of their EBT and taking it home as a souvenir, and we just may never get that market buck back because they took it back to Utah or Nevada or Arizona. So
or those college students, they went off to college, so they got their EBT and they left to go to school or to go back home or whatever their situation is. So
we did have somebody in the group say, we made a deal with our neighborhood markets or our sister markets in other parts of the city that will accept their EBT if they accept our EBT. That sounds like a nice idea. I'm going to just jump in here and say that your bookkeeper or accountant, and certainly anybody administering your grant is
Don't tell your controller.
Don't tell your controller.
If they're listening, they're crying or screaming or something bad's happening right now. So that is a nice idea. Yeah. We like the idea of cooperation, but these are federally funded programs, and there are some parameters and things to keep in mind. So.
That's a really good question, though. Lots of great
question.
EBT questions.
Yep.
And we'll just remind you, the Farmers Market Coalition does so much with their EBT and SNAP education. So encourage, if you offer EBT or SNAP at your market, or you want to and you want to learn more about it, go find out more information from Farmers Market Coalition. They have tons of resources.
So many resources on their site.
Yeah, and get your staff all trained up on that, too, so they can feel confident answering questions.
Yep. Yeah. For sure. We love... the conference, Farmers Market Coalition always does really good educational programs on nutrition programs and nutrition incentive programs and a lot of EBT coverage. So that's great.
Yeah, as a market manager, I know taking that session when they were at our conference before, it just made me feel that much more comfortable speaking to people who were bringing their cards or speaking to other market managers who were looking to get started and stuff. So it's nice to just know kind of all those nuances because it's kind of a tricky business to accept the EBT there, but it's such a benefit.
So important.
And I think we get a lot of shoppers at our markets specifically because we offer EBT. They look up like which markets. Yeah. So obviously our market is fabulous and everyone should come, but like also since we offer EBT, since we can accept EBT, people come out there just because that's what they have to spend on groceries. That's what they need to go to a place that accepts it. And so instead of going to a grocery store, they can go to our markets.
Yeah. And it's we always remind people of that, even if you're not doing it because it's a wonderful, warm and fuzzy nice thing to do, help feed people that are on these kind of sort of shaky grocery budget kind of places. It's also bringing more sales to your farmers and vendors because the people that use these programs are coming to your market instead of somewhere else. So your farmers and vendors are selling more. Yeah. Everybody's happy when that happens.
When our farmers come at the end of the day and turn in their EBT and market match and it's like over $100. Yeah. Could be over $100 that they would not have made that day. Right. So it really helps everybody out. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait to visit Yakima, Washington.
Put it on our list.
Put it on our list of places to go. Oh, boy. All right. What else are we talking about today?
We had several questions about post-COVID, which is a nice way to think of things. Yeah. About,
we were so close. We were so close to precedented times.
The worst group project we've ever participated in. So post-COVID sampling protocols and requests to share what we have changed at our market, or kind of just picking farmers market managers' brain of, are you allowing samples at your market? And if so, what does that look like? Right. Is that the same as it was pre-COVID, or how you're implementing those rules, how you're communicating those rules to vendors, how you're monitoring shoppers' behaviors and making sure they're following the rules?
Yeah, probably post-COVID was a bad place to put that, but post-COVID lockdown protocols, which are, at least for the time being, lifted in most places.
Yes. At least here in the United States or in California, Yeah,
all over from what we can tell from our group, but it's... a few people have specifically asked us to share what we did in terms of new protocols at our markets. And so I'm going to kind of run through a Reader's Digest condensed version of that real quickly. It's fairly straightforward. as in all things, when you make rules and guidelines for your vendors and farmers, if you keep them reasonably short and simple, they might actually read them. So I'm going to recommend that you don't make it too complicated. But basically what ours boil down to is, if you're going to sample, and you have to let us know that you're going to sample, and the reason you have to let us know is so that we can send you these protocols and you can have to acknowledge that you read them. So you have to let us know. You've got to have hand sanitizer on your front table for customers. So that hand-to-hand contact that was such a on-fire kind of thing at the very beginning of COVID protocols, people seem to have backed off of that. It's mostly airborne and all that, but still people are nervous, and we don't really know if you're touching things and you're touching your face, what's happening. So leave that hand sanitizer on your front table for customers if you're sampling. Samples have to be offered individually to customers by the booth staff. They can't be self-serve. And you know what? This is something that we preach anyway because it's so much better for sales than setting out that buffet line.
You know, and it's less gross.
Oh, yeah, there's that. You know, just to put it in a more homey way.
Eating from a trough of hummus that thousands of other people have eaten from.
Yeah, it's not good. So this is way more effective in terms of increasing sales as well as being more hygienic and, as Justine puts it, less gross.
Less gross.
Sorry.
Be less gross in 2021.
That's right. We're going to write that into the protocols. Be less gross.
Can it just be less gross?
Maybe buttons. Less gross. Full-size packages cannot be open on your table for sampling. So this is kind of the same thing as not doing a buffet line. You can't just open 17 tubs of hummus and put them out there. So samples have to be pre-portioned in souffle cups, on a spoon, a toothpick, offered to the individual customer on tongs. You can't have a wide open thing that various people can dip into. This is just logical and less gross. If you have a broad range of products, we recommend, we're not requiring this, but we're recommending it to all of our vendors. We recommend highlighting 1 or 2 featured products to sample rather than attempting to sample your entire line. And this was pretty much pointed at our hummus guys. Rather than having 17 tubs of open hummus out. And there's a cost of goods associated with sampling. I think a lot of vendors and farmers forget this, but it's important. We recommend picking a couple of things that are featured that day, sampling those things, and this will give you some interesting data at the same time. You'll find out how much sampling affects your sales. If those 2 items that you're sampling are the ones that are flying off your table and the others are just sitting, well, then you'll know that sampling's effective. So that's good to know.
It's like Costco. They don't sample every single thing
exactly.
in the store.
Yeah.
They sample like some select things, and those things probably sell really well, the sampled items.
And then you rotate, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, don't neglect your poor, sad product that didn't get sampled last week. Sample that
hummus.
next week. Yeah. So move it around. And then lastly, and this is a rule that's always been in effect, but we're just taking this opportunity to mention it again. You must supply a trash can easily accessible by customers for any cups, spoons, toothpicks, etc. that may be discarded in the process of sampling. Like all trash, you need to take that with you when you leave the market that day.
Yeah.
Leave only footprints.
Those are smart.
Please.
So
I feel like they've been effective. Like
They have.
on Saturdays, it seems like not everybody is doing samples, which is interesting to see the vendors who decided to no longer do that.
Yeah.
And I think the people that are doing it are doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think it's made vendors a little bit better at like describing their items and having better descriptions like on their labeling or their signs. I know as a farmer's market shopper myself, I'm not a big like sampler. I don't want to like touch food when I'm shopping. I might be like drinking a coffee, and I don't want to like taste your orange juice when I'm drinking a coffee because that's just a weird mix. So like if you can just explain it to me and be like, this is a little bit more sweet, this is a little more tart, which kind do you like? It's like, fine, I'll just buy the tart one. Like
Most of us have spent our lives buying products in grocery stores that we don't get to taste before we buy them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, try to remember that. Try to remember that people buy groceries all the time that they do not ever sample. You don't sample groceries at the grocery store.
Right.
So just try to keep that in mind. I think it's kind of been burned into vendors' heads that like they have to sample and they have to offer like a variety of a big sampling panel to everyone that walks up. And it's just not true, and it's just not necessary.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had people that discovered during COVID that their sales were down X amount because they weren't sampling, and their cost to participate, because they didn't have the cost of goods of sampling, was down X times 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gave everybody a chance to kind of analyze that, and a lot of people have found that maybe sampling isn't the best plan.
Yeah.
I do understand as a former vendor, like there is a certain joy and satisfaction you get out of seeing people sampling your product and people being like, whoa, that is delicious. And like that is a buzz that people that make products want to get. That's part of why you sell at farmers markets. However, typically when you get people that don't give you that reaction and they're like, and then it like totally breaks your heart. Those are usually the type of people that are going to the farmer's market just to feast and not to actually purchase anything. So I do think a more structured sampling protocol or giving in little souffle cups or giving on a little toothpick. There's something about that like people aren't going to like take handfuls of them, right? They're going to take one, they're going to enjoy it, they're going to purchase your product or move on. So I think it just kind of weeds out the type of people that are just going to the farmer's market to eat samples.
For free.
Yeah.
So there's a way to do it. There's pros and cons, and it's just kind of honing that, I think, is the important thing. Making it less gross and more cost effective and honing your sampling craft.
Yeah.
That's right. There we go.
Yeah. Okay, we have a big one. I feel like Catt should read this one because she has the most experience.
Because we have the most trauma around it.
Most trauma with it. Okay, so we heard from Tiffany in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. We hold our market on a grassy area, which actually sounds lovely and delightful.
Oh, nice and cool.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Not like hot blacktop.
Yeah, I've been to markets where there's a grassy area and it's cool. She says, and it's worked really well for our vendors and most of our customers. However, this week we had a complaint that someone felt that it was not ADA compliant. I'm trying to figure out what exactly the requirements are for this type of outdoor event. Does anyone happen to have any idea as a starting point? Boy, do I.
Boy.
So the ADA applies whether you're indoors or outdoors. So the outdoor event thing, forget about that. You're just a person running some kind of a business and it will have ADA requirements. Those are pretty easy to find online in terms of what the minimum width of the sidewalk or walkway is that you have to leave. You're probably dealing with that somewhere in your permit process. I'm not going to guarantee it. I think Fort Thomas is relatively small, so maybe there's not a complicated permit process. But you do have to have clear walkways. You can't provide obstacles to people that don't have full mobility as they get around. I can see how grass would be tricky for that. Some of the best markets I've been at that are in grass are very lucky that they also have
a walkway.
And the walkway has probably been supplied by a parks department or somebody who's aware of what width it needs to be so that a wheelchair can make it down without running into trouble. The fact is, if you've got a market in grass and there is no way, perhaps there's hills or there's holes or anything that impedes people from getting through that are limited in mobility or that are in a wheelchair, you're going to have to figure out what's called reasonable accommodations, and that means that you're going to have to figure out how to provide them with as equivalent an experience as possible without them having to make their way over those obstacles. So that may mean that your staff is going to have to shop for them. It may mean that you need to rearrange your market to figure out a pathway through that doesn't have obstacles for somebody with limited mobility. So it's going to be like dealing with an ADA situation in a restaurant or on a city sidewalk or anywhere else. You do still have to play by those same rules, and it can get expensive if you don't. So and frustrating. I mean, understandably. Hopefully the first thing folks did was not make that kind of complaint. They tried to see if there was a way to work with it.
Yeah, and I wonder in this situation, it's not clear whether the person that made the complaint was claiming that they were not able to access the market. Maybe it could have been someone who was conjecturing based on seeing the market that they think it might not be ADA compliant. So
maybe it's somebody who'd had their own ADA issues.
It's unclear who made this comment to Tiffany and her market. I'd say, and no matter who it was, you want to take it very seriously because, like what's Catt's saying, is it can get very litigious and it can get very difficult. And there are different consultants and services that you can ask to come out to your market and assess it. But this is obviously something that a market manager would want to take up the chain of command to whoever is helping operate the market and really act on quickly before it turns into a larger situation.
For sure.
Yeah. I would say like a flat grassy area isn't necessarily not ADA compliant, but are there like gopher holes? Are there tree roots? Are there things? And you might want to think about
how you're placing your booths.
Yeah, where are your booths placed? And just someone who has like full mobility, are you going to have a trip and fall
Right.
situation? So taking a look at your market for everybody, just constantly having those kind of eyes on your market. Is this accessible to everybody, and is it safe for just everyone to walk around, or to, have their wheelchair come through, or if they're on crutches or on a scooter, things like that.
I had somebody suggest, two things. One, Dar popped into that conversation, I think, on our group from Farmers Market Coalition,
Very
and
helpful.
she pointed people towards the Farmers Market Toolkit that the Vermont Law School did.
Yes.
Always a helpful resource. We keep it on our desk, for sure.
Keep it in my pocket.
That's right. Yeah, very helpful. So I'd suggest checking that out. And then the other thing is kind of like Ali Ball's suggestion at the conference a few years ago, that you stand in front of your booth and pretend you're an 8-year-old and see if people can understand what you're selling. See if somebody totally not used to farmers markets could get it. It's a worthy exercise to borrow a wheelchair or a pair of crutches, or in a pinch, put on a really high pair of stilettos and walk through your market and see what kind of danger points you encounter in your market. Pay up your insurance first. We don't want to, and be careful. We don't want to see any market managers with broken legs either.
Yes.
But try going through with the view of somebody who is challenged in terms of mobility and see where are those danger points, what's going to get somebody in trouble, what chances are you taking in terms of a trip and fall, or in terms of frustrating somebody that may be in a wheelchair and really wants to buy fresh, nutritious food. What kind of things are you putting in their way?
Yeah. Access needs to be kind of number one when you're thinking about the layout for your market. So
Yeah, smart.
yeah.
Well, if I ever see a market manager walking around in stiletto
Yeah,
heels,
you know why.
I know that they took your advice.
That's right. If you see a customer in stilettos, however, that's just typical people watching.
That's just Little Italy on a Saturday.
That's right.
That's just heels getting stuck in the piazza. I love it. Oh boy. All right. Well, this one gave me nightmares for a week. But regarding people driving through the market, and I'm sure every market manager just screamed right now. Emily from Midland asked, we recently had someone who was driving through the market while it was still open, gasp, to glean for a local nonprofit.
Who should have known better?
Yeah. Now I'm trying to make the no driving, which includes vendors, in the market crystal clear, where, yes.
I have to say this one caught me off guard because we pretty much make that crystal clear right from the beginning. I mean, that's kind of market manager 101.1.1,
That's
which
the
is
first thing I tell vendors. You can't drive.
barricades and signs.
I'm wondering if your market has barricades.
That's what I'm
but
wondering.
I also have seen markets where
That
the
are just open.
They're just open, or the barricades are like staggered in such a way where like you shouldn't drive a car through, but a car could if it really wanted to, which clearly this gleaning group did really want to drive through. So I would say extra barricades.
Yeah.
And some really clear
Big
signage.
signs.
And just be real direct. Don't make it foo-foo. Don't make it all decorative. Just say absolutely no moving vehicles within these barricades, or however you want to phrase it, between whatever times. Or
And we deleted the Emily's last name from this comment because if her insurance agent is listening, they've just had a stroke.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of some other markets that I've been to, it might not, it just might not be as clear, or it might be in an area where, I mean, our market is one continuous street.
Yeah.
Like, it's very obvious if we shut it down that we have lots of protections in that way. But if you just have like a unique situation, or maybe there's a bend in the street where you can't see the full market from one visual area, somebody might be
a driveway
confused.
loop, and it's confusing whether or not you have to stop or go. I've seen, it's difficult, and people driving don't get it. And I've seen every type of person try to drive in at various times of the market. Lyft drivers, people gleaning, other companies, vendors, farmers, people that have been there for a long time, and
People
I'm
picking up garbage cans from local restaurants.
just all sorts of.
Another suggestion besides barricades, bike racks, signs, whatever. Maybe, towards a certain point in the day in the market, maybe towards the end of your market where those gleaners might be showing up or thinking about coming. Perhaps you have a staff member you can assign at the end of the block to watch for that. Yeah. Maybe, depending on the vendors you have at the end of those blocks, you say like, hey, you're block captain, you're in charge of, making sure that nobody drives on the street. Or maybe you put a row of trash cans there or whatever you can. So, at least to block that person for or slow them down at least before they drive into the market.
Yeah, and if she didn't indicate this, but if it's a gleaner or anybody who is like repeatedly driving through or consistently driving through, you definitely need to like send them a letter, send them an email so it's documented that you have told them what the rules are and that they may not drive a moving vehicle there, because if there ever is an incident, which we very much hope there is not, you want to make sure that you can show that you made these rules clear and they can't say, oh, I didn't know I couldn't drive through.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if there's an accident in your event space during your market, no matter who it is, that's on you.
Yeah.
So you need to just really make sure to cover all your bases and make it clear.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to get a big sign like the Ballard Farmers Market does at the end of their blocks, because they like shoot into the air. You can see it from so far away.
If you drive through there, you're blind.
You should not be driving.
You should not be driving.
Not be driving at all.
Yeah.
And so Justine's comments about at the end of the market, staging a volunteer or an employee or somewhere at the end to let people know when they can drive in, especially if you're talking about somebody like gleaners or vendors, sort of segues nicely into our last question for today, which is vendors staying around for the full market.
This is one of your guys' favorite things.
This is one of our favorites, yeah. So this person said, are there other markets out there who mandate the vendors stay the entire time your market is open? Our response to that, obviously, is why are there markets that would not? But I know that's
why,
true.
But I know that it's true, and I've seen other markets that do.
I have seen other markets that are much more casual about this than we are. Has your market always run this way? Has anyone changed those rules and mandated full open hours attendance when you didn't have that stipulation in the past? So that sounds like maybe that's been a challenge. And if you changed, can you please share how it went or what you did?
Yeah.
So we've definitely had this from the very start. It's one of our basic tenets. If you've ever listened to Tent Talk before or been involved with us in any way, you know that what we're trying to do is compete with grocery stores and that we're trying to make the experience the same, whether a person shows up first thing in the morning or whether they have to race over after the kids' soccer game to pick up groceries. You want them to be able to buy groceries up until the time you say you close. Otherwise they're going to go to a grocery store and not come back to you, and that's not what we want. We want to keep them shopping from farmers and vendors. So we've definitely always had this as a hard and fast rule, even if vendors run out of everything. They have to stay there. They have to keep their tent and their sign up. So at least that person that got there last minute thinking they could do their list knows that, yes, that product is available at the market. They're out for today. Not great, but better than thinking that that product isn't even offered at the market.
And then they scratch it off their weekly shopping list. I mean, honestly, when you take down all your signage and you pretend like you were never there for the people who come in the last half hour of the market, you fall off people's shopping list. Like, do vendors,
or they get mad at us because they're like, why isn't this person here today? And not every shopper understands the relationship between the vendor and the market manager. They don't understand that we can't control if they had an employee emergency. Like, they don't understand that. So people end up coming to the information booth asking, hey, I'm looking for this vendor. Where are they? And we say, oh, they should be at their regular spot. And if they're not there, then
I don't know, where are they?
They're going to direct their anger towards the market as a whole, and the whole market suffers if one vendor isn't where they're supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. Somebody's aggravated and says, well, I'll just get it at Trader Joe's, and then never comes back.
Yeah. And we have had we had a terrible situation years ago with a vendor that would consistently run out, would always want to pack up, would always want to leave. They were talking about us with other people, and then in like a public forum, and that actually was like as horrible as that was, because that was very dramatic. But I got to see a lot of feedback from people who aren't in the farmers market world asking why we have that rule. And then someone said, well, can't you just put them like on the corner so then when they sell out for the day they can just scoot out? And then we said, the corner, like the entrance to the market, you want us to have somebody packing up and leaving an hour before the market's over at the very entrance and start of the market, so all the shoppers coming in see somebody packing up and leaving. And
so then they leave, and then the other vendors that are open suffer.
And a lot of like people were like, oh, I had never thought about that before. And so I think maybe explaining this to vendors like you would to shoppers would be helpful. Because then vendors were seeing us comment back and forth with this person and just explaining like why we can't allow people to pack up and leave before the market's over. All those reasons that Catt just discussed. Having them on the corner doesn't make sense. Having them at the end of them. I mean, like, what is the end? Markets, I don't know a market that has like a back corner. Or like, I mean.
Right.
And if you do, you want to put a vendor back there who already wants to leave early, why are they even coming? It
gives that feeling kind of like when you're at a party and the host wants to go to bed, and so they start doing the dishes. They start picking up the plates and kind of tidying up, and it gives you the cue like, oh,
It's
I've
time to
stayed
leave.
past my welcome, I need to leave. When you're at the farmer's market and you're shopping and you see a bunch of vendors packing up or putting their stuff away, you're not going to want to order a crepe from somebody that is putting away their food, because chances are they're not going to put as much heart in it as they would at the beginning of the market. It just
Or
gives you
even
the
the
sense of
person-
they don't want to serve me anymore,
Right.
Yeah.
so I'm going to leave.
Or even the person across the aisle from them. If I see people packing up, I would feel bad asking anybody for anything at the market, because I'd be like, oh, they're all trying to leave, right? Like if this person's leaving, like, oh, everyone's trying to get out of here, I would feel so bad to be like, hey, can you put that in a bag for me? And so you just give a terrible impression, and it all comes back to, like, why would you have operating hours if those hours don't mean anything?
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know how I feel about restaurants that say we're open at 9 until we sell out. I don't go to those restaurants. I need an end time, and I need to know.
Yeah.
And then when Catt had a restaurant, when I was a wee lass, she was always very strict about, like, okay, we close at 3 p.m. If someone comes in at 2:50 p.m. and wants a fresh squeezed lemonade, even though you just cleaned that, excuse my French, bitch of a lemonade, like lemon squeezer, that thing was horrid and it was so hard to clean. Even if
Made
it's
a great
clean,
lemonade.
it really did. That's why everyone liked it at 2:50. Even if they come in and want to order something, if you're open until 3, that means they can get the full menu until 3, which means you're
Yeah.
making them a lemonade at 2:50. And it makes a difference. And we had a very busy restaurant and we have a very busy market, and this philosophy is not for nothing. It's
There's a reason
It's a
behind
reason.
everything we do.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so to get to the other part of this question, have you ever changed those rules and mandated full open hours attendance when you didn't have that stipulation in the past? How would you change it? You would explain to people why you're now doing it.
Yeah.
And say,
Yeah.
sorry, we didn't do it before, but this is why we're doing it now. And explain to them, it's not to be punitive. It's not to make you stay longer than you want to stay. It's to, we assume you're here to sell product, to sell as much product as you can.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need to be here with product on the table. You need to develop trust between you and your shoppers. And the only way to do that is to honor your hours.
Yeah.
And so this is why we're doing this, and this just is part of the program here.
It falls
Yeah.
in line with why you have to be open when the market's opening and why we have to be open, rain or shine.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
just competing with grocery stores. Like, please remember that and just be consistent. Consistency is just the key to everything.
Yeah, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but I thought that the question about the people driving through the market and the vendor question were actually part of the same question or part of the same conversation in the farmer.
I think they both came up in the same conversation.
Well, I mean,
and-
if you need an excuse of why you're changing your rules, it's because someone
'cause
freaking
we're
drove through the
driving.
market.
Yeah.
And just tell everyone, somebody
have-
tried to drive through the market, and it's because vendors are packing up early, and it makes it seem like the market is ending. So
why wouldn't you drive in?
everyone stays.
Yeah.
It's detention
You
now.
can-
Everyone stays to the end.
You can blame it on your insurance agent. You
Oh,
can
because
say
your
they
insurance
said we had
agent
to go.
definitely wants you to
Just
stay
tell your
fully
controller.
barricaded. That's
Get
right.
your controller to write a letter.
That's
Sign
right.
your controller's name on the vendor advisory. But if you've ever had to change any rules, which is like, oh, we used to close for rain and now we're going to be open. We're going to be open later. You're going to change the hours of the market, whatever. You're going to change locations, any kind of rule change. It's always best to just explain to the vendor why you're doing it, have a good reason for doing it, and be able to articulate that to them, not in an over-explanatory 3-hour lecture kind of way, but just explain to them from a business point of view why you're making this change in the rules, business and safety, and consistency. And I feel like for the vendors who have chosen to listen and to just be professional about it, they've always said, okay, great, that makes sense.
Yeah, we
I just didn't
totally
know.
had that situation one year when we had a really rainy season here, and I got to say we're blessed. Sorry out there, folks. I don't want to gloat, but we have really temperate weather here.
Yeah.
But we did have a really, really rainy year, and we had vendors that said, "Well, how come we stay open, rain or shine, when some of the other markets don't stay open, rain or shine?" And we gave them a very clear, sort of 2-paragraph explanation of the whole philosophy of, if somebody comes out and we're closed, they're going to go to this grocery store down the street and they're going to find out it's easier to park there and you only have to pay one cashier and they have carts and they might not come back. And do you
Yeah.
want to lose those customers? So you have to keep customers in the habit. You have to honor your commitments to them. And a lot of vendors that year in that situation said, oh, I get it now. Okay,
get
of
it.
course we'd be here, rain or shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, I think what Bridget's saying is anytime you make a rule change, anytime you establish a rule, the more logical explanation you can give to your shoppers to your vendors and farmers, because clearly you're not instituting rules that don't benefit your farmers and vendors. That's the whole point. If you can explain to them how and why it benefits them, a lot of times they don't know. They haven't thought about it that deeply.
Yeah.
Just explain to them, and I can almost guarantee that they'll be on board.
Yeah. And I think the same thing with when vendors explain to us, like, why they do certain things.
Sure.
Which I don't understand. And I go, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I get it, And it's either like, oh, I get it, but don't do it. Or like, oh, I see what you're saying. Like, I didn't think about it from that perspective because, like, I don't go to a kitchen and pack up my food before I come to the market. I do different things in the morning. So when you can just give the other perspective to people that you work with at the market, it just makes for a, more consistent and enjoyable situation, I think, for sure. But what it comes down to is you're in charge.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
Yeah.
We're all on the same team. And the goal for everybody is the same. Bring more people to the market, sell them more good food.
Yep.
Passion and profit.
Wow, those were great questions. I love
Yes.
hearing the things that people ask us in the group because even though I've worked as a vendor and now I've worked on like the operation side and I've been Farmers Market Pro for a while, the stuff that comes out of there is just like wild, like, whoa. And it really gives me a sense of both we all have the same issues no matter where we are, but also different places of different parts of the country just have different experiences, but I feel like all the lessons are very universal.
For sure.
Yeah, different markets have different situations that they're dealing with. Being on grass, not having barricades that cover your street so people are driving through. Like, there's just different setups and things to think about and talk about. So it's nice to kind of get a group together that understands and can share ideas.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Love it.
Love it.
And that's what we are here on Tent Talk, a place for all of us to listen to issues that affect us all. So thank you for listening today. And big thanks to MarketWurks for streamlining systems to make things easier for market managers and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. MarketWurks has been a sponsor of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, almost from the beginning, and we're excited to welcome Chris and the team back in 2022. For more information about MarketWurks, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Farmers markets are all about community, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Connect with people just like you from various parts of the country and share what's happening in your area in the terrific conversations over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're just getting started in farmers markets, check out our Vendor 101 online course at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcast, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you are listening on YouTube, give us that thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will have another great episode next week, so tune in.